Natal Health Departments, Gauteng's Human Settlements Department, Water and Sanitation, Roads and Transport Departments following suit. Suffice to say, I do come from KwaZulu-Natal. In the period 2011-2012, and just for the record, I'm not related to any families from India. In the period 2011-2012, of the 536 government departments and institutions that were evaluated, only 117 institutions achieved clean audits. The irregular, unauthorized, and wasteful fruitless expenditure by provincial departments and entities had reached 24.8 billion. The Auditor General commented, for the very first time, this kind of misuse of public funds has become the norm. It is also interesting that the highest scorers or offenders were the Northwest government with 4.1 billion, KwaZulu-Natal 3.9 billion, and the Free State 3.2 billion. The South African Institute of Race Relations calculated what could have been produced constructively by the state with this 24.8 billion. It was discovered with this money, 7.4 million children could have been paid their child grant. More than 400 schools could have been built. And South Africa's infrastructure for water and sanitation could have been covered for a year. Last but not least, if and should our president live for 9,000 years, his salary could have been paid for that number of years. The Auditor General's comments following the release of the report states that there has been board-level instability, and you've seen this with many boards, including the SABC, poor leadership, no decisive decision-making against corrupt officials, vacancies in key positions, weak procurement, and supply chain systems and processes are repeated. The continuous lack of consequences, as officials with series of offenses continue to commit them, and this reality pushes them into becoming serial opportunity grabbers and temptation creators as their deeds go unpunished. As a result, they continue to transgress the laws, the rules, and the regulations. We now come to private sector crime. And private sector crime, on the other hand, has been reported by way of the latest empirically based PwC Global Economic Crime Survey in 2016. This survey shows that these phenomena are a serious threat and a challenge to state, to business leaders, and the country as a whole. Their latest perception-based survey indicated that the findings in comparison with the 2014 survey was unchanged, as 69% of South African respondents experienced a variety of economic crime in the last 2 years. The report itself calls the South African percentage a pandemic, and it is understood that unless radical changes, planning and action are taken, there are serious implications, as for a significant number of years, South Africa tops the ranks in the Global Economic Crime Survey, followed by France, 68%, Kenya, 61%, and Zambia, 61%. So what is the corruption fact? In the last 20 years, South Africa has lost 700 billions of rands through corruption. Despite the fact that South Africa has signed all conventions and protocols, and South Africa's BRICS partners' positions have deteriorated significantly, both in score and ranking, with Brazil facing serious economic and political crisis and social turmoil. I come back to my point. 700 billion rands being lost through corruption, yet South Africa is a signatory to all these conventions and agreements. The United Nations Convention, the Southern African Development Community Protocol, the African Union Convention, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's Convention on Bribery, foreign public officials in international business transactions. Furthermore, South Africa has some of the most comprehensive anti-corruption legislation in the world. I think we are so good at drafting policies and formulating policies that every year has become force of habit for us to just formulate policies. And this is a sad reality. We have the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, Access to Information, Promotion of Administrative Justice, Protected Disclosures Act. We have a Whistleblowing Act, Financial Intelligence Act, and Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act as well. Furthermore, we have a series of legislative frameworks. So it's not like there's deficiencies in the legal environment. We have the revised Public Service Integrity Management Framework, Public Service Anti-Corruption Strategy, Public Service Charter, the Charter for Public Service in Africa, the Public Services Act, and the list goes on. So where are we going wrong? And to think that we have a bloated bureaucracy as well. These are the institutions that we have to fight corruption in South Africa. And these institutions include the Financial Intelligence Center, the South African Police Service, no comment, the Anti-Corruption Task Team, the Multi-Agency Working Group on Procurement, the Special Investigations Unit, the National Prosecuting Authority, the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court, the Asset Forfeiture Unit, and other organs as well. We have the Anti-Corruption Forum, the Interministerial Committee on Corruption, the Auditor General, the Public Service Commission, government departments, the Public Protector, the National Public Service Anti-Corruption Hotline System, the Anti-Corruption Coordinating Committee, and the Public Service Anti-Corruption Forum. We now come to the political mistrust. In the South African public opinion political terrain, the recently released opinion polls in regard to existing trust levels towards the state and its organs paint a bleak picture, a very serious feeling of mistrust towards them. The opinion-based Afrobarometer survey that took place in August-September 2015 has indicated that because of a series of well-publicized and much talked about events related to the rand and political and administrative corruption, mistrust has become a cruel reality in our country. The mistrust is also rooted on harsher economic conditions for the whole population, especially the most vulnerable sections of the middle classes, and the lack of service delivery in all layers of the government apparatuses. What also needs to be taken into account is that the media reports an almost relentless wave of community protests and have shaped these attitudes. The report indicated that a minority of the people in the country, that is 47%, believe that South Africa as a country is a full democracy with one or with minor problems. Comparatively speaking, this is a significant drop of 19% recorded in 2011. It is recorded that only 64% of people prefer democracy because of the government's way of running the country. The corresponding figure for 2011 was 72%. About 59% of the rural population and 52% of black South Africans surveyed were more positive to the view that South Africa is a full democracy with few problems. In the age group 18 to 29, the so-called born-free generation, 49% agreed with the position. The popular trust towards the president has dropped radically when compared to the 2011 findings. 34% against 62% in 2011. This is the second lowest levels since the first research findings that appeared in 2000, also pinpointed that more than half of openly declared ANC voters indicated that they had no trust in the president of the country and the ruling party. And ladies and gentlemen, this week we have seen the dilemma that the African National Government has faced with the happenings in Parliament. There was also a significant decline in response to the performance of political leadership at all layers of government. The ANC, all opposition parties, as well as administrative officials of the state apparatus. There are, however, some positive signs identified in the survey, as some state institutions, such as the South African Revenue Services and the Public Protector, had the trust of the majority, while the independent broadcast media enjoyed an increase in public trust, from 69% in 2011 to 79% in 2016. The legal institutions, including the courts of law, the police, and the Independent Electoral Commission, lost trust over these years. The Afrobarometer survey stated that in its latest survey results, it suggests the increasing dissatisfaction with South Africa's current leadership has spilled into the waning support for democracy itself. According to the 2016 PwC report, Economic Crime Survey, in terms of the trust in law enforcement agencies, 70% of South Africans believe that these agencies are not sufficiently trained and resourced to stop economic crime. Hence, the popular trust in them is very low. The truth is that people who live in a particular country build up their own ideas and judging a state and its institutions from the ways they treat their citizens, meaning that people are able to dissect exactly the flaws in economic crime and anti-corruption attitudes and actions of the relevant authorities. The survey findings identify a serious mistrust towards the South African Police Service, the National Prosecuting Authority, the Special Investigations Unit, and other agencies, and is indicative of the belief that corruption is everywhere, irrespective of differences in social and economic development and political stability. At a more concrete level, what a number of research findings have shown that a lack of trust in state apparatus and politicians, such as the president, has a direct negative effect on the voting patterns in the country. Over the years, the Independent Electoral Commission has introduced a series of well-publicized voter registration attempts to convince citizens to vote. And there are the figures. In 1999, 16.2 out of 18 million registered voted. In 2009, 17.9 million out of 23.1 registered voted. In the 2014 elections, only 18.4 million out of 25.3 million registered voters cast their votes. And in the 2016 municipal elections, 57.9% of those registered voted. This was higher than those voted in 2011. The key issue is not mentioned by the analysis that is more than 1.5 million had registered as voters in comparison. And this is according to the IEC in 2016. So this is what we are faced with. And this depicts very clearly what is going on in our country. And you can see by the cartoon the disused clinics, the burst water pipes, the potholes, the cracks in houses, open toilets. And we want people to vote for a government that has become unaccountable. Some reflections on the South African realities. So what has this corruption and 700 billion rand in the last 20 years, what is the type of impact on South Africa? Corruption in South Africa has dire consequences for the present and the future of the country, as it deters investment, it increases unemployment, it affects the inflation and exchange rates negatively. It harms international trade, reduces the GDP, it leads to resource misallocations, it harms a country's international reputation, it limits competition, efficiency and innovation across the economy, waste of money and capacity, causes higher costs to do business, it causes higher taxes, it retards development, it compromises public sector efficiency, it increases income inequality, it delays or stops development, it diverts public finance, it reduces public revenue, impedes economic and social development, distorts decision making, undermines efforts to reduce poverty, it undermines accountability, undermines government and governance, it weakens the legitimacy of the political process, and it makes patronage a driving force, ultimately undermining the rule of law. I come now to the ASIRIS intervention. And I would like to think that ASIRIS, in the last 3 years, has published extensively, nationally and internationally. And ASIRIS has links with leading African institutions, and recently with the initiative of the Good Governance Group under the newly established African Research Universities Alliance, it is hoped that ASIRIS will contribute its research on corruption to promote governance on the African continent. And ASIRIS advocates ethics training for all sectors of society in the fight against corruption. The newly established research chair in anti-corruption, funded by the eminent South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, in partnership with the University of Stellenbosch, would be creating a national evidence-based corruption index. And this will undoubtedly open new avenues of empirical research and endeavors that will lead to an enhancement and widening of knowledge and realities of a creation of a world's first evidence-based corruption index. And ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues from SAICA are here, our senior executives. I wish to thank them for this initiative. Together, we are going to fight corruption in all sectors of society. I continue by saying that the ASRIS team, together with SAICA, will bring about a new paradigm shift in the manner in which we will be addressing corruption in South Africa. What we are looking for is people power and not